So a classic sort of example is, maybe 10, 15 years ago, Amazon was struggling to scale their business because they had a monolithic database slowing down their site. And one of the sort of famous emails Jeff Bezos sent out was that they weren't allowed to have these just big monolithic teams. They had to break into smaller autonomous units. And this was sort of the notion of two pizza teams. And what happened is that teams then started, and this is the transition from the classic to this sort of innovation paradigm, where you had smaller autonomous teams that were given problems. To Jan's point, give me a question to answer and I'll go find the answer. This sort of started to create this small product teams. But what happened is that the team stayed small. The software that they built was modularized, but the database stayed as a monolith. People trying to access that information was really hard and took months, took weeks, very difficult to get access to this knowledge source. So what you're seeing now is that while we modularized the software, we didn't modularize the database. And while we gave product teams customer problems to solve, they didn't have responsibility for internal customers in the company to make their data available to them. So really with this notion of moving to a data mesh in conjunction with cross-functional product teams and modularizing your system, is that teams need to think not only about the problem they're solving, engaging with their customer, the outcomes they're trying to drive, but making their data that they're creating available internally. And a simple example might be, say you're working in Spotify, and you've been given the problem to sort of discover emerging artists. Your team is trying to find out, well, how can we elevate emerging artists in the playlist or make people aware of them? That's your customer problem. But you're also going to be responsible for the data that you gather around that problem and exposing that in meaningful ways for other teams in the company who will start to think about, well, if I need to understand something about emerging artists, how could I ask questions of that team and have their insights that they're learning in a modular way sent back to me? So people are owning not only the customer problem, but the data, and then sharing the data to their internal customers. And I think this is a huge shift about not only understanding your customer problems, but the data that goes with it and exposing it internally.